Introduction to panic attacks. In this article, we will focus on panic attacks, what they are, what to know and what to do about them. We all feel anxious or scared sometimes, but it is when anxiety and fear become uncontrollable, when a person begins to panic, that things move beyond normal or everyday experience of worry. And when this experience of panic begins to be a repeated one, when anxiety feels unmanageable, it may be time to start looking for help. In exploring these issues in this article, you will focus on 3 questions. What are panic attacks and panic disorder? How can panic disorder be understood? What can be done about panic disorder? A caution: panic attacks are very common and you may have experienced them yourself. If this is the case, increasing your knowledge about panic attacks and how to handle them should help. But focusing on the topic of panic could, particularly as you start reading, make you feel edgy. Usually, this feeling will subside as you concentrate on the readings, so it is worth keeping going. However, do also take steps to look after yourself. What are panic attacks and panic disorder? According to the formal systems of psychiatric diagnosis, panic attacks are extreme experiences of sudden and overwhelming anxiety and fear. Panic disorder is the regular experience of recurring panic attacks. Psychiatric diagnosis. Psychiatric diagnosis is the process by which mental health difficulties are diagnosed, or identified or labeled. There are 2 main systems of psychiatric diagnosis. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders (DSM), which is produced by the American Psychiatric Association, and which is a comprehensive manual of mental disorders, now in its 5th edition. Chapter 5 of the International Statistical Classification of Diseases and Related Health Problems (ICD), which is produced by the World Health Organization, and is currently in its 10th edition. Defining panic disorder. Now that you understand how panic attacks are formally defined, what about panic disorder? Panic disorder is when a person experiences recurrent unexpected panic attacks. Crucially, at least some of the panic attacks are experienced as happening out of the blue, and panic attacks can even occur when someone is asleep. In panic disorder, the repeated experience of panic attacks seriously disrupts a person's life, affecting their work, personal relationships and social life, in fact, most areas of daily living. Often they live in fear of having more attacks, worry constantly about what the attacks are and what might happen as a result of them, and change how they live to try and avoid future attacks, e.g. by not going into public places. Unfortunately, fear of a panic attack may become such a focus of a person's life that the fear itself impacts nearly all aspects of their quality of life. How can panic attacks be understood? Seeing a tornado hurtling towards you, you would probably not be surprised if you felt scared, or experienced your heart beating fast. However, in panic disorder, panic can appear to emerge suddenly, without any apparent trigger, and so apparently without cause. So why do they occur? The next section examines some key ideas about what causes panic attacks. There has been a lot of research on this topic, and lots of different theories put forward, including the idea that a person's genetics, or biology, may play a role. One really important idea though is that the way a person thinks about their experience of panic is key. This is known as a cognitive theory of panic disorder. Cognitive theory of panic disorder: if you walk up a flight of stairs, you might notice your heart rate going up. A common thought might be, wow, I need to get a bit fitter. A less common thought is to think that this means you are about to have a heart attack. The cognitive model of panic disorder suggests that it is this kind of catastrophic interpretation, or terrible misinterpretation, of body sensations that are key to developing panic disorder. The vicious cycle that develops is depicted in the figure below. The sequence is that first there is some kind of stimulus. This could be something internal, like noticing a body sensation such as one's heart beating fast, or external, like noticing that the shop you just walked into is very crowded. This stimulus is then interpreted as a sign something bad is going to happen. It is perceived as a threat. As a result, a person feels anxious apprehension, and because they are worried, their body begins to have normal physical reactions to anxiety or worry. The person notices these body sensations and then interprets these as catastrophic, dangerous. This creates an increased perception of threat, which in turn increases the worry, which then kicks up the bodily response, and so on in a terrible spiral that results in a panic attack. Panic attacks, what they are, what to know and what to do about them. The cognitive model of panic disorder, the vicious cycle of panic attacks out of the blue. And while asleep earlier, it was stated that a key aspect of panic disorder is that a person can experience panic attacks occurring as it were out of the blue or even in sleep. The cognitive model of panic disorder seeks to explain this in the following ways. Panic attacks where there is a clear trigger. Sometimes panic attacks occur after someone gets very frightened. For example, a person who is deathly afraid of spiders might have a panic attack after seeing a big one unexpectedly. In this case, the panic attack, while a horrible experience, might not be unexpected. Panic attacks out of the blue. Sometimes a panic attack happens, as far as the person is concerned, quite without warning. One idea here is that these panic attacks occur because a person experiences a bodily sensation that they associate with panic attacks and are scared of, such as being slightly breathless. This bodily sensation might be caused by something benign, maybe their heart is beating fast because they ran for a bus, or are excited. However, the key point is that the person does not or cannot separate the trigger of the bodily sensation from the actual panic attack. The result is that the person experiences a panic attack as coming out of the blue. Panic attacks during sleep. In the same way as waking unexpected panic attacks, it is thought that a thought or emotion or benign body sensation probably set off the panic attack. However, it is not the thought or emotion or body sensation that wakes the person, it is the panic attack. So from their perspective, the panic attack comes without a cause. The cognitive model of panic disorder seeks to explain panic disorder in terms of catastrophic interpretation of the normal physical reaction to fear or worry. The next section explains more about this normal fear response and how it is not itself something to be afraid of. The fear response. A panic attack involves someone experiencing a set of body reactions that are associated with feeling fear, only often in the apparent absence of anything to be scared of. This set of body reactions is termed the fear reaction. In the next video, Professor Roger Baker describes how this fear response might be experienced if you were suddenly threatened by someone holding a knife. Watch the following video. Video 1. Professor Roger Baker discusses the fear response. Now watch this second video, where Professor Roger Baker explains what happens when the fear response is accidentally triggered in a panic attack. Video 2. Professor Roger Baker explains what happens when the fear response is accidentally triggered. The role of interpretations in panic attacks. Research suggests that more than 1 in 10 people will experience a one-off panic attack in their lifetime, but that only somewhere between 1 in 20 or 1 in 60 will go on to develop full-blown panic disorder. So why do only a minority of those who have panic attacks develop panic disorder? In line with the cognitive model of panic disorder, one idea with research support is that it is those people who have catastrophic interpretations who are more likely to develop panic disorder. The role of avoidance. The cognitive model of panic disorder stresses the role of catastrophic interpretations in panic attacks. However, what explains why people hold onto these beliefs, sometimes in the face of lots of evidence to the contrary? For example, a person with panic disorder may have a persistent belief that they are at risk of a fatal heart attack despite having been told, on multiple visits to hospital emergency rooms, that there is no sign of problems with their heart. One idea that has been put forward is that people hold onto their catastrophic interpretations because, simply put, they do not get the chance to learn that they are wrong. Why is this? Imagine someone who gets anxious any time that they get slightly breathless because of their catastrophic misinterpretation that this means that they are struggling to breathe, which means that they are going to suffocate, which means that they are going to die. So what do you think that person might end up avoiding if they are worried about feeling even a bit breathless? Avoidance may not be a helpful strategy. You can see that avoidance of things that are thought to lead to a panic attack can quickly shrink a person's world. This is one reason why the panic disorder is often associated with agoraphobia, which is a phobia of open or crowded places or of going outside the person's home. Avoidance of coping behaviors. In addition to avoiding activities, situations and places, a person with panic disorder may also carefully do particular things to help them cope with the things that worry them. An example of this might be that a person who is worried about feeling breathless when walking up a hill might start taking deep breaths. How do these coping and avoidance behaviors prevent a person from learning? This is illustrated in figure below. Panic attacks, what they are, what to know and what to do about them. Coping and avoidance behaviors. In the first sequence, when the person engages in their avoidance or coping behavior and then nothing terrible happens, or at least they don't die, the person links the outcome of no catastrophe to their avoidance or coping behavior. They might think, I managed to keep myself alive because I took careful deep breaths and walked up that hill slowly. However, as the second sequence shows, by engaging in these behaviors the person fails to learn that they would not have died even if they had not done the avoidance, safety behaviors. Avoidance and coping behaviors thus actually work to maintain panic disorder because they stop a person from learning that their feared bodily sensations are not as dangerous as they think they are. Moreover, some coping and avoidance behaviors may make things worse. For example, breathing deeply and quickly, as you might if you are in a bit of a panic, leads to hyperventilation, which can lead to a person feeling more short of breath. The role of emotion processing. Up to now, you have been learning about the cognitive model of panic, which seeks to understand how thoughts, e.g. catastrophic misinterpretations, and behaviors, e.g. avoidance, can make panic worse. Another theory is that the way people respond to their emotions may also be key in panic disorder. Baker, 2011. This theory suggests that people who experience panic disorder are prone to the following: trying to control their emotions by bottling them up or suppressing them, not expressing, in words or actions, or sharing with others their feelings, focusing on the bodily feelings associated with emotion rather than the emotion itself, having trouble labeling emotions, not connecting emotions with the events that cause them. Baker argues that this pattern of dealing with emotions is evidence of difficulty with processing emotions. He also argues that this type of emotion processing often leads to the very first panic attack that a person experiences because this pattern of not dealing with emotion leads a person to fail to notice when they are becoming seriously stressed. Stress, often undetected by the person and occurring months before the first panic, can build up to a level where a panic attack is easily triggered. In explaining this to patients during psychological therapy, I compare it to water building up behind a dam. The water rises bit by bit over the months, and the pressure mounts all the time. At a certain point, the pressure becomes too much, and the dam suddenly gives way. Huge columns of water burst through the fractured dam, causing devastation to the land beyond. Panic is like this, sudden and devastating. Unknown to the sufferer, the pressure has been building up for weeks and months. The panic attack appears to be sudden, but it is not. Baker, 2011, p. 76. One value of this emotional processing deficit model of panic is that it implies a pathway to remedy panic disorder, learning better emotional processing strategies. What can be done about panic disorder? Panic attacks, what they are, what to know and what to do about them. What treatments are effective for panic? You have learned something about what panic attacks are and how the panic disorder can be understood. Now it is time to consider what help is available for a person with panic disorder. Therapy for panic disorder. There is a considerable research base that says that cognitive behavioral therapy is the most reliable and well-evidenced therapy for panic disorder. As a result, CBT is currently the most widely recommended psychological treatment for panic attacks in Britain. For that reason, the focus here will be on CBT for panic disorder. Of course, while there is evidence that CBT is effective for panic disorder, that does not guarantee that CBT will work for any particular person. In the last section you read about how in the cognitive model of panic disorder 3 elements are important, namely: fear of the bodily sensations associated with the fear reaction, catastrophic interpretations of those bodily sensations, avoidance and coping behaviors which a person uses to try and avoid feeling those bodily sensations logically. In cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) that aims to treat panic disorder, all these aspects are targeted. The therapy aims to identify catastrophic interpretations, that breathing a bit fast means I am going to die, generate alternate, non-catastrophic, understandings of bodily symptoms, i.e. breathing a little fast does not mean I am going to suffocate and die, it just means I am not very fit, encourage a person to stop their avoidance and coping behaviors so that they can accomplish 1 and 2. Crucially, what distinguishes CBT for panic disorder is that in addition to discussion, a person with a panic attack is encouraged to do behavioral experiments. More about this below. What happens in CBT for panic? Facing the fear in CBT for treating panic, the therapist's central aim is to change the person's beliefs or interpretations, judgments, about panic attacks. The whole idea behind this is that the person has made a serious mistake in their understanding of what panic is and what it could do to them. If these mistaken beliefs or interpretations can be corrected, they will be less afraid of panics and, as a result, the panics will become less severe and less frequent. Typically, the process involves first working out what is going on through a clinical assessment that focuses on understanding when and how the panic attacks occur, and then working systematically to change how a person responds in a panic attack. The assessment involves identifying a person's panic interpretation and avoidance and coping safety behaviors. Assessment of panic interpretations. The assessment of a person's beliefs around panic attacks is the first step in therapy. No two persons have the same beliefs about panic. Usually, there is a whole range of complicated thoughts around panic, and it is the therapist's task to understand and untangle this. For example, a person might believe that panic sensations are an impending heart attack and that they will lose consciousness and pass out, or they might think the panic is the first stage of a nervous breakdown from which they will never recover. Assessment of safety behaviors. In their assessment, the therapist also has to work out all the person's strategies, or their safety behaviors, for dealing with their imagined catastrophes. For instance, they might drink water, take a painkiller, lie down, steady themselves if they think they are having a heart attack, or try to counteract feelings of unreality and dizziness by shaking their head, if they think what they are experiencing is the start of a nervous breakdown. Once the assessment is complete, typically, CBT for panic involves two elements. Behavioral experiments in which the person discovers by personal experience that panic is not going to harm them. This involves a person not using their safety behaviors. Cognitive restructuring, in which the therapist uses a didactic teaching approach to help the person logically explore their beliefs so that they realize the beliefs are unfounded and incorrect. In a way, the behavioral experiments work at an unconscious level and cognitive restructuring works at a conscious level. The experiments can be carried out in a therapist's office or in settings where panic is likely to occur, such as in a supermarket. Cognitive restructuring usually occurs in the therapist's office. Most CBT therapists use a combination of both approaches, but because it is quicker and easier for a therapist to work from their own office, they often rely on patients doing homework for the practical exercises. Self-help and sources for support. CBT is one kind of psychological therapy, and therapy is not the only thing that helps with panic disorder. GPs may also prescribe medication, for example. Also, it is a great idea to try self-help. You can help yourself by learning about panic attacks and panic disorder, in particular. Things you can do that might prevent panic attacks. Things that you can do to help during a panic attack. Where to get support. Preventative steps for panic attacks include trying to reduce the overall stress in your life and doing things that might help with stress, such as aerobic exercise or mindfulness, or getting enough sleep, or doing activities you enjoy. Things you can do during a panic attack include not engaging in any safety behaviors. The following extract was taken from the website No Panic, a charity set up to help people with anxiety disorders including panic disorder. Read the extract and note down what seems to you the most useful tips for coping with panic. Remember, the symptoms and feelings, although very frightening, is not in the least dangerous or harmful. Understand that what you are experiencing is just an exaggeration of normal bodily stress reactions. Remember that when you get excited, if for instance, you had won the lottery, your body would react with churning tummy and a rapid heartbeat, your legs would be unsteady, and you would probably feel hot and overcome by the experience. The symptoms are the same when you are anxious, you just react differently when these feelings appear to come for no apparent reason, so you worry, become more anxious and possibly depressed. Do not fight your feelings or try to wish them away, be willing to accept and face them, secure in the knowledge that nothing awful will happen. In this way, they will diminish and be less intense. The main thing to remember is not to add to panic with frightening thoughts. Telling yourself that you will be okay, just as you have always been in the past, will help. Try changing what if to so what. The above also applies to those awful doom and gloom feelings as well. It is all down to tension and how we think about it. If you find yourself starting to panic, try to visualize a lollipop lady with her red stop sign and then say stop to yourself. Start changing your panicky thoughts to positive ones. It can and does work. Where to get support. If you or someone you know struggles with panic attacks, there are some really useful websites with information, support, and helplines. You can also ask your GP if you want to access free CBT for panic disorder. Helplines. No Panic. This website is a charity set up to help people with anxiety disorders including panic disorder. The website has lots of advice and support and a telephone helpline, https://www.nopanic.org.uk/mind. The mental health charity Mind's website also has lots of advice and support plus an information helpline and web chat service. www.mind.org.uk for specific link, https://www.mind.org.uk/information support. Types of mental health problems, anxiety and panic attacks, XJ5HSDL7TIU information. The NHS has information on how to cope with panic attacks, e.g., https://www.nhs.uk/conditions, stress, anxiety, depression, coping with panic attacks, https://www.mujus.scot.nhs.uk/panic.asp. Self-help books. The extract you read earlier from Professor Baker's book comes from his self-help book on panic attacks, Baker, R. 2011, Understanding Panic Attacks and Overcoming Fear, 3rd and Oxford, Lion Book. You can also find one chapter from his book talking about emotional processing in panic attacks online, http://emotionalprocessing.org/preventing panic attacks, therapy. You can access CBT for the panic disorder through the NHS. Talk to your GP to find out more. Conclusion: panic attacks, what they are and what to do about them. You have looked at 3 questions. What are panic attacks and panic disorder? How can panic disorder be understood? What can be done about panic disorder? In looking at these questions, you have heard from people who have struggled with panic disorder, and you have learned that panic disorder can become the source of incredible suffering for many individuals. However, you have also learned some key ideas about why people develop the panic disorder, and you have learned that panic disorder can get better with self-help and treatment.